Hello students, this is the video lecture for JMS 494 for chapter 10, the one that's about obscenity or whatever the official title of the chapter is. I'm standing outside of the Tiki Adult Theater. It's on Santa Monica Boulevard in Los Angeles. I'm going to go inside. I'm going to do the rest of the video lecture from inside this facility. Kidding. I know I got a weird sense of humor, but I'm not going to go in there. This is enough. You get a glimpse. This is what we're talking about. Okay? I got to get out of the road. I'm going to get hit here. I'm going to do the video lecture walking around Griffith Park. But anyway, I just thought it would be funny to start the lecture like this. Before we get into the actual substantive part of the lecture, let me talk a little bit about ratings. Ratings that go on motion pictures. I think y'all are probably familiar with those. Okay, my son recently told me, we've been watching all the X-Men movies recently. He told me about this interesting little anecdote that X-Men First Class was the first PG-13 movie to feature the F word. Here it is right here.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher.
Charles Xavier.
Go fuck yourself.
So apparently X-Men First Class has established the rule that you are allowed to use the F word one time in a PG-13 movie. And another interesting little factoid about motion pictures and PG-13 is that that particular rating was developed after there was a big uproar after the second Indiana Jones movie came out, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is so worse and lesser of a film than the first Indiana Jones movie, and then the later ones are a little better too. Part 2 is just horrible. It's incredibly racist as well. It's very racist against South Asians, but it has this really grotesque scene of, like, I think people eating hearts and baboon brains or something like that. And my wife's family actually walked out of the movie because it was so racist. And I concur with that. But anyway, parents were so outraged by that the PG-13 rating was introduced largely because of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So there's two things you need to know about PG-13 rating, why X-Men First Class is relevant to that, and why Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is relevant to that. PG-13. The ratings that go on motion pictures are not mandated by the government. This is an important rule to keep in mind. It is the motion picture industry itself puts the ratings on the movies to keep the government out. Okay, and these are the ratings that the motion picture industry does to itself. And there's no such thing as XXX, and there never was such a thing as XXX. When I was growing up, there used to be these sort of adult movie theaters. I mean, I never went to one as a kid, of course. But they would advertise, here's an old vintage photograph of one of these kind of adult movie theaters advertising XXX movies. That was something that filmmakers would just put on the films themselves to kind of let you know that this is not softcore artistic nudity. This is full on. We're going to show you absolutely everything. And then today, the most extreme rating would be NC-17. Okay. If you are interested in motion picture ratings, there's a great documentary called "This Film Is Not Yet Rated." Take a look at that. It is pretty interesting. You can show full frontal nudity of women. That's okay. You can even get by with a PG or PG-13. Full frontal nudity of a male is almost always going to get you R rating. Double standard much? Okay. All right, I got to talk fast because I want to get in a lot of information. Here's some key terms. There is no legal definition of pornography, okay? There is no legal definition of pornography. It's largely in the eye of the beholder. There's a famous saying of, I know it when I see it. And here we have a famous statue called the David. That's a naked male form. That's on display. I've seen it myself. Many people go see it. We study nudes in art history and something like that. But at some point, a nude can suddenly become pornography if it's depicted in a little bit different way. But it's incredibly difficult. That's what we're going to talk about. Incredibly difficult to establish absolute laws to regulate this stuff because, the female breast, for example, could be depicted in a sexual way, or it could be an image of breastfeeding, or it could be an image related to something like breast cancer. So it's very hard to make absolute rules here. Indecency applies to material that's not appropriate for children, okay? Material that's not appropriate for children is called indecent. That is a legal term. And many of the rules regarding obscenity, indecency, etc., relate to children, children being seen as a protected, vulnerable class. We need to protect the children. And then obscenity is a legal term. Okay, pornography is not a legal term. Obscenity is a legal term, but the standard to define something as obscene is actually very, very high. Okay, I just did that stand up in front of the adult theater. Look at, can you see the name of this chicken place? Best effin' hot chicken, is that what it says? Best effin' chicken. Yeah, now clearly we are using the F word in a non-sexual manner. So I think the regulations vary when the F word is used in a non-sexual manner. But there's also rules about using disparaging trademarks and words like this in a trademark. I don't know. I just took this because I thought it was interesting and it's relevant to the video lecture for today, but it also shows the shifting standards. I guarantee something like this would not have been allowed 20, 30, maybe even 10 years ago. But yeah, that's the name of this chicken place. There you go. Okay, we're going to start off now with some historical information, the way these video lectures are often structured. I'm looking now at page 475 in the textbook. There was something called the Comstock Act back in 1873 that prohibited mailing of obscene material. That act was also applied in such a way to prevent information about abortion and contraception, because, God forbid we have women finding out about such things. So, ostensibly, the Comstock Act is to limit obscenity and to uphold some type of moral standards, but it's used to limit abortion and contraception information. And then we get the Hicklin rule. This is discussed on page 476. This is also a very old rule, no longer in effect today. In effect, the Hicklin rule, we read here, Regina Hicklin said that the test of obscenity is this: whether the tendency of the matter charged as obscenity is to deprave and corrupt those whose minds are open to such immoral influence and into whose hands a publication of this sort may fall. Basically, it's like anything that might corrupt the most susceptible people among us, including children. If it could corrupt children, it was therefore obscene. That was thrown out. The Comstock Act, back to that, even though it's incredibly old, it has been invoked in the recent past. This is a headline from 2023. This is not a headline from decades ago. This is a headline from 2023. Judges invoked the Comstock Act just a few years ago to limit the mailing of abortion pills, as the medicine was called. They said you can't mail out the abortion pills because it violates the Comstock Act, which is absurd. I don't think the Comstock Act has any validity any longer. But it's still in the minds of some people who want to limit the rights of women. Okay, now we have, jumping ahead to current obscenity definition, there was something called the Roth test, developed in Roth v. United States. You should definitely take a look at that in the textbook. But now we have something called the Miller test. To find material obscene under the Miller test, a court must review the work as a whole and consider whether, and here's, I'm going to put all the words up here, okay? The average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work appeals to prurient interests. That means it's trying to sexually arouse you, to appeal to the most base instincts of people. The work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by applicable state law, and the work lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, sometimes called the SLAPS test. Now, there's a lot of things we could debate here. What is the contemporary community standards? What is the community? Is the community where you happen to be living? My parents live in Thomasville, Georgia. That community, I'm going to think, has different standards in San Diego. But if something's on the internet, what community are we talking about? That's a global community. So what is the community, and why is it that obscenity laws are often used to target LGBTQ individuals, right? That type of sexual activity is often deemed to be out of bounds. So we want to use obscenity laws to punish that. Whereas we might allow something else if it's a heterosexual couple doing it. Yeah, it's quite subjective. And then this whole definition of what is serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value is a matter of debate. Many years ago, I learned that pornographic magazines would throw in something clearly not pornographic just to satisfy the slaps test. Like, here's an article about how many bullets an F-16 can fire, or something about World War II, or something about birds in the Amazon, just so someone could say, hey, the whole work is not pornographic because look at this one thing. That feels like a very weak argument. Okay, the first time I talked over the slide, I ended up taking up way too much time, so I'm doing another version of it just to make it quick. And I'm just going to stress one thing. Child porn is a no-no. That's it. Child porn is the ultimate no-no. That's the ultimate forbidden stuff. Laws, state laws and federal laws about child pornography are strictly interpreted as they should be, You can get away with lots of stuff. You can get away with lots of stuff and claim First Amendment protection. When it comes to child porn, no way. Okay, now I got these two slides from a colleague of mine or another professor that I know through academic circles, Kim Zarkin. Okay, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. So when the slide said Kim's favorite thing, that's Kim Zarkin. Okay, in Lakeland, Tennessee, during the last presidential election, someone puts up this yard sign. Maybe, hopefully, you can see that there. F them both. That's what it says. F them both, right? And I agree with that sentiment. Maybe some people watching the video lecture agree with that sentiment. Person's told to take down the sign, then they say, let me just cover up the U with some tape. Like, that's going to hide. We all know what the F word is. Then she says, the person who put the sign, I shouldn't have to put the sign tape up. It's my right, First Amendment. I can do this. F them both. The city starts to fine her, saying that the sign F them both is obscene. A federal judge ruled that the sign is not obscene and it's unconstitutional for the city to take action against her. And this issue gets at the heart of why it can be so challenging to come up with laws against obscenity. This crosses over into political speech. Political speech is the most protected type of speech. We do have regulations about political speech. There's some things you just can't say. But when it comes to this, the judge said it's not obscene. So actually, the judge orders the city to reimburse her the $700 she had already paid, and then also pay her legal fees that she had incurred. So I think it's kind of a funny case that if you want to put a sign that said F them both during the next presidential election, there's precedent for that not being obscene. Okay, this incident that I'm going to tell you about was not in the textbook, but it relates to the topic. There was this actress, kind of a voluptuous, buxom actress, Mae West. Even when I was a kid growing up in the 1970s, Mae West was still part of the sort of public consciousness because she had such a famous image and was such a famous character in pop culture. Anyway, she was known for a very provocative and suggestive way that she would speak. She was a movie star decades ago, black and white era. But when she would say something like, why don't you come upstairs and see me sometime? It's clear that she doesn't want the man just to come upstairs for casual conversation. The way she says it, it's clear that like she's implying something else. What you doing, big boy? Hey, that's kind of the way she would talk. Anyway, Mae West appears on a radio show, I think it was 1937, the Chase and Sanborn Hour. I'm doing this without my notes, just walking around in the park. She appears on the Chase and Sanborn Hour in 1937. I know there was a skit about Adam and Eve. And she interacted with this dummy, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. Edgar Bergen was the ventriloquist, Charlie McCarthy was the dummy. Yeah, there was a famous ventriloquist on old radio. How is there like a famous ventriloquist act on old time radio? That seems kind of nuts. Anyway, she interacts with Charlie McCarthy and has a joke about, I got a splinter, like she's been rolling around with the wooden dummy. And she says some other things which today would be incredibly innocuous. But at the time, people were outraged that she's making obviously sexually suggestive innuendos and jokes on the radio. Can you imagine this woman is making sexual jokes on the radio? And the FCC gets complaints, and the writers of the show blame the woman. Okay, that's what I want to stress here. The writers of the show blame the woman. They say that the words themselves were not obscene. The words themselves were not indecent. It's just the way Mae West said them that made them sound risque. So they want to blame the woman. This also relates to an incident many years later. Maybe some of y'all have heard of this. 2004, Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson appear at Super Bowl halftime show. Justin Timberlake, at the end of the song, reaches up and pulls off Janet Jackson's blouse, exposing her breast for 9/16 of a second, not even a full second, barely over half a second, 9/16 of a second. Janet Jackson's breast was on national television. It wasn't fully exposed because she had like a metal pasty around her nipple, which to me suggests that to say it was a wardrobe malfunction, that's the famous explanation, was that it was a wardrobe malfunction, is not true. I think the wardrobe functioned exactly as it was intended to function. Why would she have a pasty on her nipple if it were not going to be exposed, right? So, similar situation where there's a lot of complaints. You look in the textbook, I think the textbook talks about this. I think ultimately whatever fine or charges that were levied against the local stations for airing it either went away or reduced to nothing. I don't remember the details, apologies for that. But whatever the official penalty was really negligible, really minimal. The real punishment came to Janet Jackson. It really damaged her public career for doing this. It didn't damage Justin Timberlake's career, surprisingly, although he was the one that ripped off the clothing that exposed her. And Justin Timberlake, I think y'all, I mean, I know you're all much younger than me. I think y'all still know Justin Timberlake. His peak was Sexy Back. I think everything he's ever done since Sexy Back has just been downhill, but that's a good song. I like that song. Anyway, once again, we're blaming the woman for something risque and not blaming the man. The textbook talks about 7 dirty words. This case from George Carlin, I think Pacifica Foundation is in the case title. I thought about playing the 7 dirty words routine, putting it in the video lecture. It's too much even for me. You can find it online. Go look at it online. George Carlin, who was a hilarious, brilliant comedian, great social commentary as well. He did this routine, actually did get in trouble for it. And the FCC actually does view the 7 dirty words that were first identified by George Carlin as being words that are particularly problematic. So take a look at the textbook, be familiar at least with the gist of the case, and know why is George Carlin relevant to obscenity regulation in the United States? You should know that question. Okay, now when it comes to indecency, yeah, we have this issue of fleeting expletive. Okay, if something happens very briefly, there's a case involving Bono from the band U2. There's some back and forth over that, but general rule of thumb is that if something happens very quickly, not intentional, it's called a fleeting expletive. It's generally not going to get you punished. There was a noticeable indecency fine in 2015 that is discussed in the textbook. Yeah, on page 494, I think it was. A local news station was doing a story about an adult film star. I'm assuming it was a woman. Maybe that's sex of me to assume it's a woman, but I'm going to assume it's a woman. They show an image from a pornographic website. They blurred out the main images. The news producers feel like they've done due diligence and kind of blurred out the offending material. But there was an ad on the side of the website that was sort of auto playing some sort of moving images. Does it say what it was? Does it say what it was, what the ad was? Okay, I'm just going to say hand on aroused male genitalia. That's the one I'll say it that way. Euphemism, a hand on aroused male genitalia. That is like a very noticeable case. That was found to be indecent. And then we also have this issue of safe harbor. What page is safe harbor on? Yeah, you should definitely know about the safe harbor rules. Yeah, also page 494. Also on page 494. That material that would otherwise be indecent is not indecent if it airs after 10 p.m. and before 6 a.m. Presumably, kids are not watching TV or listening to the radio at that time. You can disagree with that. You can disagree with anything, okay? But I'm just telling you what the textbook says and what the concept of safe harbor is, okay? That's the concept of safe harbor. And some stuff, there's this quote here from Stephen Colbert where he talks about President Trump's mouth being this is Colbert's word, not mine, Vladimir Putin's cock holster. Okay. Stephen Colbert said that. And the court said it was not indecent because it happened during the safe harbor time. Okay. Now we come to, now I don't know what is going on right now. It's so difficult. There's incredibly easy access to sexually explicit content. The government in the rules to protect minors from obscene material, those rules are often upheld, and courts have agreed that you can ban child pornography, but there's effectively no limits on what adults can see on the internet. There's effectively no limits to what adults can see on the internet. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with this. I'm recording this in June 2025. The issue of deep fakes is already prevalent, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. About a year ago, yeah, this was in 2024, there was this image of someone made these deep fakes of Taylor Swift. And now apparently the issue is becoming like really problematic for like high school and middle schoolers. People, imagine if you have this person in high school you don't like, you could very easily make some embarrassing, even humiliating photos of them, try and extort money out of them. And then this is from June 2025. Sharing deep fake pornography is the next sexual violence epidemic facing schools. I don't know how to stop this stuff. I agree that's a problem. I don't mean to laugh about it. But almost any law that tries to limit pornography or obscenity is going to face a challenge, because there's going to be some artistic use of it that somehow is not what the lawmakers envisioned. And it's very difficult to just, ban entire types of content. My one suggestion is maybe we as a society, if we could all get together, we could just collectively say this stuff is not embarrassing anymore. And if someone were to show you a naked photograph of your favorite star, male or female, just shrug your shoulders and go, whatever, who cares? I don't care. It's just, like showing me nude photos of someone, I don't care. It's just not embarrassing. That's a human being. We all have the same body parts. And then probably the photos you're being shown might be fake. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think maybe we could just collectively stop feeling shame about these types of images. And then the power of someone to extort you for having them would go away. I have these embarrassing photos of you. Fine, show them. I don't care. Whatever. Anyway, that's just my idea. Okay, that is it for the video lecture on chapter 10. I hope you learned something, and take a look at the lecture notes, take a look at the textbook. And if you haven't seen George Carlin's Seven Dirty Words, it's probably worth looking up.